What is up, y'all? Welcome back. Today we're doing a fresh installment of This or That. This or That is the extraordinarily clever name that I've given to this series on my channel, where we make the best use possible of the ridiculous encyclopedic collection that I continue to add to of makeup, and I ask y'all basically, what are two plus products that you are agonizing between, that you just like cannot, from your experience of seeing them on the internet or what have you, make a decision between, like you can't see the differences, right? I'm going to swatch them for you. I'm going to explain to the best of my abilities and show to the best of my abilities in 4K. This is our first This or That in 4K, yay! To hopefully help demystify the differences between them, and I will also give you my kind of biased opinion on if it were you and me sitting down having coffee and you were like, hey, what do you recommend? I would just tell you which one I like better. I will do both. So this might be the most responses I have ever received. I will, as always, at the end, link my This or That playlist, because if there are ones that you submitted that I don't get to today, there is a chance that I have talked about them in the past, because this is an ongoing series, so definitely check those out. And without further ado, here are all the products that we're going to be comparing today. Let's go ahead and jump in. You can always tell that I'm having a hard time by how hard I've overcompensated on my makeup. And today, it was one of those days where I was like, I'm just gonna take it easy. And then just like the longer the morning ground on, the more eye makeup I put on, and the less decisive I got about the cool versus warm of it all. And then I sprayed Tula Signature Glow all over my face. And I talked about this on my stories, but when you get down to the dregs of it like this, the little agitator ball, you know it's been there the whole time. If I didn't shake this up with the utmost responsibility throughout using it over the last however long, all of those little shimmer particles might not have been as evenly distributed in every single application of this product that I've put on my skin. And so I shook the daylights out of it today before I put it on my face, and it sprayed a disproportionate amount of shimmer particles on my complexion when I was done doing my makeup. So I look kind of magenta stroby in real life, which is not ideal. I'm kind of looking like a Cullen, but any hoodles. Y'all had some great ones today. I'm actually really excited about it, because y'all always, this is one of my favorite things about this series, is that you make observations about the similarities in products that don't necessarily occur to me, because I am kind of always like staying ahead of the churn, or at least I'm trying to. And sometimes that makes me not necessarily pause and think like, how does this compare to other things that I've reviewed lately? And so the comparisons that y'all have made in here are, as usual, very impressive. Makeup by Mario Soft Sculpt Bronzer versus Phytosurgeon's Cream Bronzer. So this is not going to be a what I prefer. This is going to be a pure comparison, because in this case, they are different enough that I feel like you could like one and like the other for very different reasons. Does that make sense? So here is what's left of my Makeup by Mario Soft Sculpt Transforming Skin Enhancer, which is a very sheer bronzer. That's kind of what they have in common, right? But this one is like almost serum-y to the touch, right? It like melts on contact. It's dewy when you swatch it. It's not quite as dewy when you apply it to your skin, because I feel like it kind of like allows for it to spread easily, but it's not going to give you this like gelatinous kind of heavy feeling on your skin. Like that's not what it does. It does cooperate really nicely, but it's not like a mattified finish, right? It is going to be a little bit serum-y versus, and you saw how soft that was, right? It's like this, if I were to stick my fingernail in it, it would sink all the way through. It has this like gel serum kind of texture to it, and I would say the pigment load is like ridiculously low. It bothers some people how ridiculously low the pigment load is, because it's almost more of just an adjuster for your skin tone, not so much like a bronzer. Now, and I have been told, both by phytosurgeons and by reviews of phytosurgeons, that you're not really supposed to stick your finger in this, but for swatching purposes, here we are. This is the Spectral Sunlight Cream Bronzer. This is in Golden Warmth, shade 3. I have 4 of these. This is not my chosen shade. This was just the first one that I grabbed, but this is the phytosurgeons one, and you can see very evidently here the difference between those textures. So the main thing here is that the Phytosurgeons is almost like a dry putty. And I don't mean that as like a dig. It's just, it's something that you have to kind of get it worked up, and then once you get it buffed onto the skin, it doesn't look any different from your skin. It doesn't mattify. it doesn't hydrate, it just looks like your skin. It's a wild product that's really difficult to compare to anything else because I do feel like there is a little bit, not of a learning curve, but like when you approach this product, it's just not like anything else. It's kind of courageously stiff in a sense. So when you're putting it on with either a sponge or a brush, I usually see Jason, the owner, use a brush. You're picking up so little product, but it buffs on so evenly that it ends up looking similarly sheer to the Makeup by Mario, but in a totally different way. Like they both look really natural, but the Phytosurgeons is going to give you more of a skin-like finish. It's going to look like you're not wearing makeup at all, but it's a lot more buildable. You can get full bronzing out of it. Whereas I feel like the Makeup by Mario, if you were to try and build it to a true bronzer appearance, you're gonna get too much kind of slippiness on your skin, and that's just not really what it's intended for. So they are different enough that I don't necessarily feel like it's like, oh, I like one more than the other, but this one rings more as a bronzer, and this one is truly a skin enhancer. I know that it's like dumb to use the word that they actually have like, you know, invented and applied to this product just for the sake of describing this product, but I'm wearing it right now and I had to put bronzer on top of it. Do you know what I mean? It's meant more as like something that just kind of like warms the skin. It's not like a cosmetically visible, effective bronzer. Which is silly because they're like, why do you even want it then? I find it to be really effective. I think it's really beautiful, especially for no makeup, but I feel like the Phytosurgeons gives you more options. It's a little more difficult to use, but it gives you more options. And hopefully those swatches really tell you a lot of what you need to know here. We are 9 minutes in and we've done one. Buffalo Beauty Boy asks, Mary Kate or Ashley? That's a tough one. I think we all think that we're Mary Kate, but we are all actually Ashley, and that's not such a bad thing. And that was when the comments became carnivorous. Go off. Here's a good one. I like this one. This is a really good example of y'all making comparisons that I never think of. YSL Candy Glaze in Scenic Brown, which I just got. Like I just got it last week. They sent it to me from YSL and I made a reel about it and everything. Like I love it, love it, love it. Compared to the About Face Cherry Pick Lip Butters in Kiwi Fuzz. This is something that we're going to find out about together in real time. Now, first things first. These each has a smell. These each has a smell. Each one has a smell. I believe that was actually correct English. Wow. You're not wrong, Jess. Those are pretty similar, okay? This one smells citrusy fruity, okay? And maybe a touch floral. And this one smells like artificial cherry candy. Artificial like watermelon cherry candy. Or like a peach ring, almost. You know, it's like super, super artificial smelling. And not even in a bad way, it's just kind of like got that kind of like, you know, nostalgic gummy worms thing going on. So, first of all, we should talk about the price difference, because this is $18 and this is like 40, so. It might even be less, might be 16. Here they are next to each other. This is the Cherry Pick Lip Butter right there, try and get it out of the glare. And then there's Scenic Brown. Scenic Brown's gonna have a little bit more yellow in it. You can see this one's got a little bit more of like a purpley mauve thing to it, ever so slightly. If you can't see that, don't sweat it. It's just my extra cones being special. But yeah, they are just a little bit different. This one's giving a little bit more orange. This one's giving a little bit more blue. And I think that the main difference here is just the pigment load. You know, you're going to end up with so much more pigment in the Cherry Pick Lip Butters. The other thing is like the YSL is just, it's not quite as just totally melty. Yes, it is called a gloss in stick. They both are that kind of glossy balm that almost doesn't work in this kind of delivery system because it's like it's almost too soupy. That it's like if you cranked it up too much, it feels like it would just kind of fall out. But they managed to have quite, you know, just the right amount of viscosity. And as far as my preference goes, I always am going to go for A, the one that's a little bit more brown, and B, the one that has a little less pigment to it. I am extraordinarily biased in this sense because I think that the YSL Candy Glaze, between the hype, the expectations, the reality, the experience of using it and everything, I have now owned 4 of them and one of them I've used all the way up. So 2 of them have just been the clear. I used one of the clear ones all the way up and then bought another one. I really think that this formula hung the moon. Like I am on the Kool-Aid for the Candy Glaze. So bear that in mind. It is an extraordinarily biased take because I happen to love it. And that is also about the packaging and everything. I like the luxury of it. And I mean, that smell, I don't even notice the smell of the YSL. The lip butters from About Face, like that is a choice, like choices. We made a choice on that smell and I can't really get past it. But the main difference between them just appearance wise is just, you know, pigment load and also, like I said, a little more mauve, a little bit more yellow. All right, I want to touch briefly on this because I don't have one of them to compare to it. So the Etherealized palette from Makeup by Mario versus Natasha Denona I Need a Nude. I, again, am biased here because I don't like the Natasha Denona eyeshadow formula. I think it's difficult to work with. I think it really calls me out on either like my lack of skill or my lack of patience or my lack of attention span. Either way, I end up with stamping and the mattes really frustrate me. Even if it's like the most beautiful color story in the world, I'm just not going to go for a Natasha Denona palette. But if that's not you, and you like both formulas and you're just trying to pick which one is better, I think that Lauren did one, Lauren Made Beauty. I think that Amanda Z did one. Like there are tons of actual straight up comparisons between the two in video form that I can refer you to on YouTube. I'm just not an authority on it. I would pick the Makeup by Mario one. If I have Chanel Sublimage Le Temps, do I also need the Prada foundation? This is a great question. This is a fantastic question because I have made such a big deal out of both of them, right? So here is the Prada Reveal Foundation, which is finally here in the United States. It hasn't come to Sephora yet as of the day that I'm recording this, but you can get it on the Prada website. The only apology I have is that it's really hard to know your shade match because there's nowhere to swatch it, as far as I know in the United States. I'm not sure. I don't know if they have it at like Prada stores or something. I don't know. Either way, I also have here the Sublimage Le Temps. Oh my goodness, look at it. It's like the very, very end of it, but I'm gonna start using this again because I want to finish it and I also want to get my head back around it as it pertains to cold weather and my skin being extraordinarily dry, so this will get finished. The main difference here is about skin type. So this is going to be for the people who have outrageously dry skin and it's an outrageously dry time of year or outrageously dry climate that you're in. I don't recommend this for everyone, okay? Like after using this all winter and it being an absolute godsend, the Sublimage Le Temps in the tub, because the Sublimage L'Essence de Teint, which is somewhere, it's somewhere, I think I can see it from here. I think I can see my house from here. It is a much easier formula to wear for more skin types, but it is still specifically for dry skin types, I feel like. This is extreme. This is on the extreme end of the spectrum in terms of giving you like skincare hydration benefits. So much so that even I, with very, very dry skin, only use this in the winter. I used it all winter, thought it hung the moon. And then when I got into summer, I was like, what happened? Because it really felt like I put on like the world's slippiest primer underneath it, which I didn't. Because as soon as my skin kind of recovered its own moisture barrier as like spring turned into summer, I did not need anything of this hydration level anymore, and all it did was just kind of like sit on top of my skin. That is the context for this, but there are, I'm sure, some of you out there being like, hey, I have extraordinarily dry skin, nothing seems to work for me, and we're entering that time of year. I would say absolutely. I mean, Chanel has a pretty lousy shade range. Call it what it is. It has improved-ish, but I'm still not going to give them, you know, full A+ credit. Their history doesn't really speak for itself. I guess you can see their history does speak for itself, but either way, that's the context on this. The Prada foundation, this is so thin. It's so thin on the skin. Let's go ahead and swatch both of them so I can show you here. It's so lightweight and it's so thin that I feel like it works for, I mean, such a larger variety of skin types because A, you're just not putting as much of it on. It doesn't feel like there's as much of it on. Wow, those are really similar shades. So this is Prada LN5 and then this is the Sublimage Le Temps in B10. B10 is my shade in all of the Chanel foundations. Coverage level, I would say that the Prada is lighter coverage. It's right here. And look at how much more, ooh, it's so beautiful and radiant. Like it's less coverage, but it has like radiance to it where this has hydration to it. Do you see that? Like this almost has light refraction, but it doesn't have like particles in it. But look how much more blurring it is, whereas the Chanel is more hydrating. So it's going to give you more of that kind of skincare serum appearance, whereas this is giving something that's sort of like blurred and a little bit more natural finish. That's why somebody who has like combo skin, I would still recommend this for, because it has more sophisticated of an adaptive dry down that could adapt to more skin types, whereas I do feel like the Chanel is specifically for extraordinarily dry skin in an extraordinarily dry climate and dry time of year. Like, it's just an extreme foundation that I wouldn't have known reviewing it this time last year, because it felt normal to me. It was like, yay, finally, something that works, you know what I mean? But as I moved into summer, I really saw the difference. I would say that the answer to your question, if you have the Chanel, do you need the Prada? Only if you're finding that the Chanel is too hydrating for you and that maybe it's finicky in certain situations. But if it's like your holy grail, you don't need to change anything, especially going into this time of year. Kackie, please, what boots are those? I live under a rock, I need them. So I think alongside this story, I had just posted the boots making their debut. I'll put a picture of them on the screen, but this is the bag that came with it. This is the Frida Salvador bag. They are Frida Salvador boots. They're like these platform boots. They're actually really lightweight. The thing is, I bought them on pre-order. I don't know when they're going to actually be like stocked. You know what I mean? I bought them on pre-order. Once they made them, they shipped them. It was like a month and a half or something between buying them and getting them. And so I will keep an eye out to see, because I'm sure they'll restock them. They're absolutely gorgeous, but they're like my favorite thing ever right now. Okay, this is one, actually, I'm gonna go grab them because this is something that I have talked about in the past, but not into this or that. So another viewer of mine actually asked me privately to compare these two, and now someone has asked me in this prompt, which I'm glad that you did, because I meant to kind of bring it to the whole group, you know, to the whole conversation. So we have the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk Matte Beauty Blush Wand in Pillow Talk, which is now on Sephora. I think it wasn't exclusive for a long time to the Charlotte Tilbury website, but I think you can get it at Sephora now. So Sephora sale coming up and everything. I do not always just fawn over a Charlotte Tilbury product, okay? Like, I'm definitely in the Charlotte Tilbury is flawed camp, Charlotte Tilbury is overpriced camp, but I think that these are perfect. I love them so much. And the Pillow Talk shade specifically, especially for fair skin tones, is just so well done, because like, yes, that just looks pink on me, but if I were to swatch it against a bunch of other pink things in my collection, you would see how desaturated it is. It's actually so kind of like ambitiously desaturated. And the thing we're comparing it to is Heartist here from Hindash. So the Hindash color fluid in Heartist. And this is such a good comparison, because really all we're talking about difference wise, I mean, sure, there's a little bit of a difference in the color. Heartist is going to be just a touch more coral, just a touch, like I said. That Charlotte Tilbury is like wildly on the end of desaturated, but the main difference here is the formula. So Heartist, all of the color fluids from Hindash are meant to be used multiple ways. It is a makeup artist owned company, obviously owned by Mohammed Hindash, and so you are not getting something that is just like designed only to be a blush. It just happens to be a blush color, but you could mix this with a primer, you could mix it with your foundation, you could put it on just on its own, but it is much more saturated. And can I tell you, she's not going anywhere. She's not going anywhere. You could put this on your lips, you could put it on your cheeks, your eyes, whatever. This is one of the longest wearing formulas that I have ever encountered. It is waterproof, it is life proof, it is everything proof. I can't wait for him to come out with a mascara, you know what I mean? Like, anything that he touches, he seems to kind of figure out how to thread the needle on a formula to make it so high performing and also incredibly user friendly. So this is super easy to use. Actually, they both are. The main difference here is, do you want something a little bit cooler and a little bit sheerer? Go for the Charlotte Tilbury. If you want something that's more versatile and you're getting kind of more bang for your buck, but you're going to probably have to think a little bit harder about like how you're going to apply it each time, but you like to have the option to put it in different places on your face and stuff like that, go for Heartist. So they're just different. It's like, this is very meant to be pulled off the shelf and used like a Sephora product, you know? And this is a makeup artist oriented kind of art supply, but they both behave so beautifully, and I love both of them. The Charlotte Tilbury also is pretty life proof. I can't get either one off of my hand. Those are there now, they're part of me. YSL Candy Glaze or Hourglass Phantom. So we are living in an era right now of just being extraordinarily rich with gorgeous lip formulas, okay? Just every brand has come out with something really incredible. So I will say that like we are in like S tier lip product land at the moment. You're not gonna be mad. Like nothing's gonna make you mad, but the few things here to consider, I'm gonna use one actually. This is Haze, and I think that Haze is a little bit too bold of a color to really compare. I wanna use something really chill. So I have, I think maybe all, close to all of these Hourglass Phantom lip colors. The first thing that I think is worth pointing out here is that, and I'm comparing colors that are not alike, but the first thing worth comparing here is the fact that the Phantom has no fragrance, but it does have plumping to it. So you will notice a tingle and you will notice your lips plumping. That's a deal breaker for some people. I think it's awesome. I'm here for all plumping that doesn't irritate my lips. So it's gonna give kind of like a, it's not even minty. The plumping is just kind of there. I don't know what they use. It's super subtle, but I don't have any reddening to my lips because that drives me crazy. I hate lip plumpers that make my lips red. I don't want that. So it doesn't do that. It just kind of has a very, very subtle tingle, not spice or anything like that. But the Candy Glaze doesn't have anything like that, but the Candy Glaze does have a slight fruity, like I said, fruity smell. And it's off-putting for some people. I've seen some people in the comments be like, I cannot with the Candy Glaze smell. And I'm like, I don't even notice it. So it's personal. They have them at Sephora. If you are near a Sephora, just smell one. You know what I mean? You'll know pretty immediately if it's for you or not. But the other thing I would say is that while I enjoy both shade ranges, the Phantom Balmy Glosses, Glossy Balms, I can never remember which one it is, from Hourglass follow the same system I feel like that Hourglass always does for all their products, where every time I put one of their products on my face, I go, that is a beautiful color and I cannot name it. They're all kind of like pinky, ruddy, browny, rosy, tanny, nudie kind of colors. I mean, they're different for sure. Like you swatch them next to each other and like you're gonna end up with one that looks more coral and one that ends up with more pink, but they're not as unabashedly like brown, like sink your teeth into it brown, or like, you know, really beautiful, like rich, like warm nude or something like that you're gonna get from the YSL Candy Glazes. I feel like the YSL Candy Glazes are almost a little bit more modern in their takes on color, and then the Hourglass is like more timeless in terms of their takes on color, and you just kind of have to pick which one you like better, you know, if you're gonna pick one shade sort of thing. I like them equally for different reasons, and also the Phantom ones are more pigmented, so bear that in mind also. It's not even so much that they're like wildly more pigmented as it is that they're softer, and so you end up with more of it on your lips, and so it's going to look more pigmented. That's all. So those are the differences. If I had to pick one, I think I'd go with the Candy Glaze, but that's just because the Candy Glaze comes in clear, and I don't think that the Phantom does. And I will always pick the Candy Glaze in clear because I'm boring. Okay, we have the Le Rouge Interdit Balm from Givenchy and Agent Provocateur from Finding Ferdinand. So these are both berry black lip balms. Like they look like they are black in the tube and then they do something different on the lips. Here's the thing, right? And I did actually, I think I swatched these together in my actual Givenchy video recently, but you don't have to go do that. We're here now. We're gonna do it again. So the main difference here, they're so beautiful, they really are. But the main difference here is that the Interdit is pH adjusting. And so the color on the skin will kind of start to shift a little bit, and it'll keep going past berry into something pink, because that is what that pigment does. That is what that pH color changing pigment does. Whereas Agent Provocateur is not going to change. It is just a beautiful, we'll do even a little bit more here, a beautiful blackened berry. And that's that. My Kosas powder broke. Should I make do or try another one? I have tried so much stuff lately in terms of like beautiful textures of setting powders and things like that, and nothing beats it, okay? There's like not much point in swatching it, but like nothing beats it. It's not that expensive in the grand scheme of things, and the things that I would call out as alternatives to it are more expensive, like the Givenchy Prism Libre or like the Hourglass. I would say like the next Sephora sale, just get another Kosas, because like truly, if you love it, you're just gonna spend more money trying to chase down that same thing. It's so good. Someone wanted me to compare concealers. Actually, a few of y'all did, so I went ahead and pulled the big three that y'all are asking about, because these are kind of my favorites, right? So we have the Prism Libre concealer, the Kosas concealer, and the Tower 28 concealer. While these are technically all my favorites, I think that it is my job in this case to demystify the differences. We're going to kind of parse them. Wow, those colors are really similar. That's great, actually. So here's CC in the Tower 28, that is Prism Libre in N95, and this is the Kosas in 1.5C. Those are all my choice shades. The thing that the Tower 28 and the Kosas have in common is that they are, I feel like, a little higher coverage and a little bit lower hydration on the skin. You just don't feel them as much, but they're much thinner than the Givenchy, and they both have caffeine in them, so they are going to do a better job for those of us who have actual like under eye skincare needs in the morning, you know, like depuff and things like that. A little lifted appearance moment, and the Givenchy might have caffeine in it, I'm not really sure. But the Givenchy, I feel like its advantage is actually how hydrating it is, because my under eyes, that's the main thing I struggle with my under eyes, is just how freaking dry they are. They're so dry and it doesn't crease. So it's like really hydrating and it won't crease. But these don't crease either. The main difference here is the finish. So the Kosas is going to have a little bit more of, once it totally dries down, a little bit more of a matte finish by comparison to the rest of them, which is actually kind of nice, because if you're used to powdering your under eyes, you don't have to use as much powder because it's going to have like its own dry down. And actually the Tower 28 I recommend for people who want to not have to powder their under eyes, because it has its own beautiful natural dry down that you don't have to powder, but it has more of a lit from within luminosity to it, almost like a pearlization to the formula, than the Kosas does. The Kosas it's nice, it's brightening, it's beautiful, but it doesn't have that like pearlescence, almost like the original concealer does, that the Tower 28 does. Like you're just going to notice that it's just a little bit more kind of like blurred and a little bit more radiant. And then the Givenchy is truly Tarte Shape Tape for over 30. Like it really is that same kind of like creamy gorgeousness that you can use as a foundation. It's super versatile, it's super buildable, it doesn't crease, at least not on me, and it wears so beautifully over the day. I really don't feel like you could lose on any of these, but it's like the most matte, medium matte, and then this is going to be the most hydrated looking, but it's still more of just like a natural finish when it dries down. It's not dewy by any means. And then you're going to end up with like the lightest weight, I think, is going to be the Tower 28, medium is going to be Kosas, and the most like heavyweight hydration, you know, is going to be from the Givenchy. And then the coverage, I feel like you're gonna get the most coverage from Kosas, the least coverage from the Givenchy. You know, the Tower 28 is somewhere in the middle, but they're all really beautiful and buildable. And if you're looking for something that is going to wear on your whole face and be, you know, hydrating for dry skin and things like that, I would recommend the Givenchy. And the thing about the Givenchy is that I do powder it. I'm not gonna say it's like never gonna dry down on its own, but like it tolerates powder, and I do tend to powder it. Whereas the other two, especially the Tower 28, I don't feel like I have to powder. So someone did ask me like, oh my God, Kackie, help me. My aging under eyes are so crepey, and every time I powder them, I look like a sarcophagus. You know, like I recommend use something that doesn't need to be powdered, that has its own dry down, and you know, pat it in really thin. It's gonna give you that caffeine, that's gonna give you the lifted appearance, but then you don't have to bother with powder, so you don't have to like run the risk of extra crepiness on already otherwise dry under eyes. All right, we have the Hourglass Veil Hydrating Skin Tint versus the Danessa Myricks Yummy Skin, and then the person also said, or anything else that you would recommend. I don't need to pull anything else. This is the one that I would recommend between the two, and I'm sorry, Natalie. She's like, if you slander my favorite skin tint one more time, and to you I say, Natalie, you are 28 years old. Not to patronize the youths of the world, but this Hourglass is really beautiful, and it is truly the dewiest thing. It is the dewiest skin tint I've ever used. It is like almost a serum purely. It is barely makeup. It's so like serum-y and glowy and beautiful and hydrating. But your girl has other needs than that. I need something that is going to both camouflage the weird kind of pigment imperfections that I have fluctuating on any given day, and I need more grip. okay? For a skin tint to have grip, it's either there or it's not, you know? And this does not have the grip. It has a lot of slip. And so when we're talking about Denise Myrick's complexion products, y'all, there's just nothing quite like them. I mean, all of them, right? The original Yummy Skin, her previous one, the Vision cover, and I mean, yes, you could talk about the balm powder as well, but it's kind of in its own class. She's a texture queen, so they all have this incredible kind of like thick grip to them, where when you put it on, you're like, okay, like that feels like that's not going anywhere no matter how thin I wear it, no matter how thick I wear it. For those of us who still want a skin tint appearance, but want buildability, want grip, want something that's really flattering, that does you a lot of favors and is versatile day on day on day, depending on what the frick your skin is doing, this is the one. I'm sorry. Like, the Hourglass is beautiful, but I don't, it's dupeable to me. Like, you could mix a skin tint with your favorite serum, your favorite daytime serum, and get something very, very similar. There's a reason they're having people like Hailey Bieber and what is her face? Sophia Richie marketing this. It's because they're young and they have beautiful skin. And it's going to make young skin look young and beautiful, just like it already is. And I'm not saying that when I was 26, 27, 28, I had perfect skin. I'm just saying I have more needs than that. And so depending on what you're like, if you're looking for something that is just absolutely gorgeous and like so skincare-y and like, you know, fine, do this, it's beautiful. But like, this is just, this does more. It just does more. And it makes me feel more confident. And I will say, I'm wearing this right now. This is the Givenchy Prism Libre Skin Caring Glow Foundation. This is a skin tint. This is a really beautiful, outrageously thin skin tint. I don't have my thoughts together on it yet. I've only worn it like 2 different days, and I have started reintegrating some actives into my routine, and you know what my skin did? It peeled immediately because I've had perioral dermatitis for like a month now, and I was not using any actives, and so I went back to using my retinol one night, and like everything on my face just would and just like shed, just like molted like a snake. And so I can't make an assessment yet on how I feel on that foundation because my skin is behaving so strangely. Okay, we have, this is interesting. We have the Say Sun Melt in Fair Bronze versus Mojave in the Persona Bronzer Stick. And my story here is that actually, I didn't like either one of these for a long time because I had shades that just didn't work for me. Say has never, actually Say and Persona, neither one has ever been like the brand that I have been keeping a pulse on. I'm not just like waking up in the middle of the night going, I wonder what Say is doing, or I wonder what Persona is doing, because like these formulas just have never really knocked my socks off. But when they came out with these shades, I did have to change my tune. So the Say Sun Melt is a very similar, I feel like, to the Makeup by Mario in its formulation, because it's that same kind of like thin, like ultra thin serum-y consistency, but it does have a higher pigment load. So you can see that is Fair Bronze, and it is such a gorgeous color, but I do find that it has a similar issue building. Like, you don't need to build it as much because it does have a higher pigment load, but it does top out in terms of building because it has that like kind of unctuous, beautiful seruminess to it. It's like a gel. So when you're putting it on, it's like, you don't want to put on too much because then you'll end up with a slippy gel, you know, whole face blech situation. So then we have the Persona sticks, which I always felt and found to have a limitation in the sense that they have such a high pigment load for the formula being a little bit more dry than I would want it to be. And so I felt like once I got it on my skin, it was sort of stiff, took a little bit too much to get it started, and I always ended up with a little too much pigment on my skin. But I feel like they really solved it with Mojave, and I've not solved it like, and now it's a good product. It's like, no, they solved it for me. It was probably always a good product. It's just like, I never found a color that really suited me. Mojave is such a perfect shade for me. You can see that the Sun Melt is actually even a little bit light for me. It's like, I'm gonna be wearing this in January as almost like, again, like a Makeup by Mario skin enhancer type thing, because it's like so fair. Whereas Mojave is both an effective bronzer on my skin tone, more so than like Teddy ever was, or was that their only bronzer shade? Either way, it's a very, very good bronzer shade, and it's more matte and it's more buildable. So I feel like this shade specifically makes me really like this formula a lot more. So if I were to pick between the two, for me, if I were like buying one again, I would absolutely buy the Persona one. But you can see the difference. I think that there's an important distinction here, and that is that like, this is a shade that doesn't exist everywhere. This is beautiful for those of us who are like me, who are like average fair-skinned white girl. You know? Versus extremely fair skin. Extremely fair skin has a tough time finding a bronzer that it, like regardless of your undertones, has a tough time finding a bronzer that effectively bronzes without making you look like you went to the drugstore when you were, you know, 12 years old and they only had one color of bronzer kind of thing. Like that was all of us. This is going to be a much more unique shade for people who are ultra fair. Same thing with Mo from Thrive. I found this to be an interesting comparison, so let's talk about it. Chanel Sublimage Le Temps versus Jones Road What the Foundation. You know, I'm glad they called it What the Foundation because then I don't have to say What the Foundation because it's just different. It's just different. And they are actually, this is another one where like the comparison, I'm like, I wouldn't have thought to make that comparison, but now that I'm thinking about it, they're not maybe as different as I would have thought. So it's like the Parent Trap separated at birth. One grew up in France and the other one grew up on a co-op in like freaking Vermont, right? That's the difference here. I feel like that might be the best metaphor I've ever made on this channel. So the Sublimage Le Temps smells like Chanel and then the What the Foundation smells like hippies. That just is what it is. And the Sublimage Le Temps is a sophisticated formula that if it is for your skin type, which is super dry as we talked about, then it will dry down. The Jones Road does not dry down. It just doesn't. It is skincare. It is skincare with a good pigment load in it and the shade range is still pretty terrible. Like, call it what it is. Okay, they're both pretty terrible, but the What the Foundation is not a sophisticated adaptive formula no matter what your skin type is. It is for people who want their makeup to not be like any other makeup they've ever used. They buy What the Foundation because it's not like regular makeup. It is like skincare for skin that you're just pissed off because like your makeup is constantly drying down into all of your lines and things like that and just making you look older or making you look drier or just like unflattered. And they want to put something on that's going to like blur and do something kind for their skin and look better than just like I woke up like this. That's what the What the Foundation does, whereas the Chanel is just going to be, it's a makeup. It's a beautiful, hydrated, unique makeup, but you buy the Chanel because you like beautiful, unique, hydrated makeup. You buy What the Foundation because you hate makeup, okay? And you want something different, and it does a really good job for those people. This is super easy. We have the Gucci blushes versus the Armani blushes. I mean, start to finish, color, formula, ease of use, everything. I'm going to say Armani all day long. I love these and I'm actually really glad that someone reminded me that they exist because I have been so just swept up in new releases and everything that I freaking forgot how much I love those Armani blushes. So there is the Armani blush in 10. I think it's a site exclusive. It might now be at Sephora, but at the time it was a site exclusive. And this is Gucci 05 Rosy Beige, and wow, you can really see the differences there. They're both beige, but like very different beiges, eh? Don't you think? Yeah, I mean, as far as buildability is concerned, usability, the luxurious feel of it, I mean, if I could put this pan in this component, I would, because this component makes me salivate, okay? This Gucci component, that's why I bought two of them. It's heavy, it's gilded, it's just so gorgeous. And you know, the Armani one, it's nice. It's nice. It's nice plastic, but it's not giving as much luxury as the Gucci. It's also, I think, $10 less. But if I could put this pan in here, I would do it because I think the component is the winner here. The formula is it's fine. This is special. All right, and the last thing in the bag here, this is actually a really interesting comparison because they're very different. This is one where I'm not gonna tell you which one's my favorite because they're barely comparable. We have the Phytosurgents, the eyeshadows from Phytosurgents, and then the Victoria Beckham eyeshadows, the lid lusters. I'm not even sure I'm comparing similar shades here. That's because I feel like the Victoria Beckham shades of the lid lusters are more committed. They're more kind of like disparate, whereas Phytosurgents almost has a branding to their colors, right? It's like all their colors are sort of like wearably desaturated. All of their shimmers kind of still fall into this like neutrally silver territory. You're not gonna end up with anything that's just like wildly pigmented. I feel like the Victoria Beckham ones, they go a little further flung. There are ones that work on me and there are ones that don't, kind of thing. This is Starlight from Victoria Beckham. This is what I have on my eyes right now, which is Crystal Constellation from Phytosurgeons. Crystal Constellation, I mean, well, the Phytosurgeons formula is just so easy to work with, easy to wear, beautiful, creamy, love it. Like, it's so pretty. And then the lid lusters are, I mean, they're immaculate, but they are powders versus a cream. There is something different there. And then the reason that I find myself reaching more for the Phytosurgeons is just that it is an easier kind of day-to-day texture and color situation to wear. Ooh, it's like the same color as my nails, look at that. There's just something about it that it's easier to call to mind, the Phytosurgeons ones, because, I don't know, it's like easier to imagine, like, you know, topping something with them, whereas this is a real showstopper. And if you're a showstopper everyday kind of person, then go for the lid lusters. Now, I will say they do have like chiffon and tea rose, like they're a little more wearable on the day-to-day, but like I just find that it's easier for me to fit the Phytosurgeons in my head as something that I would want to wear on an everyday basis, or like even add as a last step even when I wasn't planning to, kind of thing. Whereas if I add the lid luster as a last step when I wasn't planning to, it's gonna change the entire appearance of my look in a lot of cases. Plus, while this is a cream and I don't expect it to pick up on a brush, this is a powder and it still doesn't pick up on a brush. These are gorgeous. I own every single one of them. I am not trying to disparage these at all. They're just different breeds of makeup. In fact, I would liken the Phytosurgeons more to the Victoria Beckham eyewear sticks than I would the lid lusters. They're not the same, but they're more similar to the sticks than they are to the lid lusters, if that makes sense. Okay, well, we've done it, y'all. We filmed for a really long time, and I hope that this was some really information-rich content for you. That is what I hope to do with the absolutely overwhelming carnivorous stash that I have. Every single day, I have to throw some kind of like fruit or scraps from my meal in here so that my makeup collection doesn't come and try and eat me in the night. So thank you for watching again. I will put the playlist up here of my other this or that videos for y'all to check out if I didn't answer your question in this one, or just if you're curious. I appreciate y'all watching. If you appreciated this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Share it if you feel so compelled. And if you want to keep hanging out with me on this channel, cool people, subscribe. It's just something that I heard, so subscribe if you are cool. It'd be cool if you did. I love y'all so much. I hope you're hanging in there, and I will see you in the next one.